So, Minute Rice, you were talking about how you had a frustrating conversation with your conservative dad.
Yeah. I kind of want to preface this with just a little bit of nuance because, things are rarely
Oh, who
simple.
understands nuance anymore?
You're not wrong. But I think that at heart, my dad is more or less a good person, or at least I hope so, because, I have that personal familial attachment. And he is definitely a generous person. Like, for example, he took one of my old cars and gave it to a coworker of mine that he barely knew just because she needed it. Like, that's the kind of man he is. He is a man of very strong principles. It's just, unfortunately, I think those principles are very misguided, you know?
Okay. Well,
So,
I have similar issues with some of the people in my family. On the one hand, I can point out to, I can point to a couple of things that they do or think or believe that are admirable. And then
mhm.
they also tell me things like, but black people commit all the crimes.
I haven't heard that one specifically, but like the
That's one of
undercurrent
a
of race.
bunch that I've heard that all Democrats are baby eating cannibals. That's another. My mother told me that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't doubt
So
it. Yeah, no, the worst I ever heard when it comes to Democrats was like Democrats or lib slur, you know.
yeah,
So, but that's the
the
worst I
the
heard.
biggest issue for me is arguing with conservative relatives, and I say, okay, well, the thing that you just said, can we Google that? The thing that wherever you saw that in your news that you can't show me, can we just
That
like get on Google for a moment and see
I
whether
can
this
take
is
that
true?
straight to the conversation that happened with that setup.
Yeah.
Because when the conversation turned to abortion, because it did at some point, conservative, it's going to happen. I pulled up one of the stories of the women who's died here in Texas, and I read
Mhm.
it out loud to him. And he's like, but millions of murdered babies. So, thinking back on the conversation, what that tells me is that his conservatism is deeply entangled with his personal sense of morality. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to help. Like, for him, the very idea of questioning his conservative beliefs is like questioning what's right and wrong. We here in reality, we know that's not true, but from his perspective, that's how he sees it.
Oh
And
no, I get it. I get it because
yeah,
they have a deep seated feeling of morality that is so misguided that it
yeah.
is immoral.
hmm
So
But good luck.
by this
Yeah,
logic, the millions of dead babies doesn't matter how many
yes.
mothers die,
Oh
but
yeah, I know.
millions of murdered babies. So
hmm
it's the classic example is you're in a room in a burning building
hmm
and there is a baby in a crib and next to that there's a cryogenic chamber with 1,000 fertilized eggs
I
and
wish
it's
I'd
on
gone there.
wheels. You can only save one of these two things. Do you save the 1,000 fertilized eggs or the baby in the crib?
You and I would save the baby, of course.
I would think that everybody in the world would save the baby.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
the other
no,
thing
not
is that
everybody. There's billions. There's got to be a few aberrants out there.
traditionally, the Judeo-Christian tradition has
Oh,
always been to favor the mother over the baby. The Talmud
oh
gives
yeah.
explicit directions for how to participate or how to perform a partial birth abortion if the woman is dying in the birthing process. There's no coin toss that just the baby loses. The baby doesn't have its own rights until it comes out of the mother, takes its first breath, and becomes infused with the spirit and becomes a living soul.
Yeah.
Until
Well,
then, you're on your own, dude. Until then, you're a parasite of the mother.
yeah. That actually a little bit of extra added context for my dad is that he grew up in like the 70s and 80s when abortion propaganda was really at its height, and without the internet to counter it, or at least that's what I'm aware of. Like, because my understanding of it, and I could be wrong, and I am open to correction if I am wrong, is that the conservatives of that era, when Roe v. Wade passed, didn't really care because they were still fighting against desegregation. And it was only when they realized they couldn't win that fight that they pivoted over to abortion and started propagandizing against it. It's actually a relatively recent phenomenon to my knowledge. So,
Now, to me, it doesn't seem like anything ever changes. I mean, when I was a little kid in the like 1971,
Mhm.
I can remember when people were complaining about affirmative action, what was called then, where you have major industries and you can't just have white people. If you only have white people, well, then that's going to look suspicious, right? So if you're
Oh
in
my!
Los Angeles, then there should be some number of Asians, some number of black people, some number of Hispanic people. That the hiring practices, when you have thousands of employees, you're going to be required to have some ethnicity represented there.
Mhm.
White people lost their fucking minds
And they
because
never stopped.
they thought that was being unfair to them.
Yeah, and they never stopped losing their minds over it. I heard that in my childhood, and I grew up in the 2000s. Like, that's 30 years of difference, and they're still saying the same shit.
Yep.
So, yeah. And, like, the frustration is because I love him, because I have this connection, and because he has been not the best of fathers, but he was certainly a better father to me than his father was to him. Because I've heard some horror stories about what my grandfather put my dad through. Like, I don't want to go into details because that is very personal, but like, there's a lot of good there. And I want to see the good in him and focus on it. But like, conservative ideas lead to harm because it leads you to look at, for example, a gay person and say, you are not valid. You should not exist. And that's a hateful thing to say to somebody. But if you believe God's on your side about it,
and the amusing thing is it doesn't matter when they say that their morality comes from the Bible, and then you throw the Bible at them. Then suddenly, well, no, you see that their morality doesn't come from the Bible at all. It comes from Fox News or it comes from their minister or whatever. But when the Bible says, "Oh yeah, abortions can be performed anytime a husband is jealous and thinks that his wife may have cheated on him," then they can. The Numbers 5. Basically the entirety of the chapter.
Numbers 5, yep.
Talks about how you can do a chemical abortion through an enchanted potion, because there's magic all through the Bible.
The bitter potion.
Yeah, and this is a potion of abortion.
Yes, it is.
But of course, that's not what they call it. They call it the bitter, whatever, the bitter drink or whatever. Yeah. But that's what it is. And when you cite that and explain it to Christians, to the fundamentalist types, again, they lose their fucking mind. No, that's not what it says. It doesn't say what it says.
And like I said, I think the root of that is the entanglement with their sense of morality. Because if you challenge someone on what they think is moral grounds, they're going to violently resist it, even if you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure you can empathize with that frustration. I just wish one of us knew what to do about it, Well,
you can convince me that I'm wrong. I mean, it's happened.
I told him that, but he told me more than once.
When I've held a position that I thought was well-founded and then come to find out that it wasn't, or when someone would reason with me to get me to reevaluate a position, and then I would have to say, well, no, I get it. You're right. I should change my position on that. It happens. But not with religion. And what do they think morality is? That's another thing. They think that morality is you don't do something. It's never something you do that you should do. Of course. Because it would be good for people. No,
it's always a list of don'ts. Thou shalt not.
Morality is you don't do something because God will see it and punish you. And since prison systems are better than 95% religious believers, well, that obviously isn't working. Right. The more religious a criminal is, I've seen statistics, the more religious the criminal is, the more abusive and the younger and more plentiful their victims and so forth. And the religious believers are going to be the ones who most likely support torture of prisoners and as well as capital punishment. So they're strongly violent and they're all about vindictive revenge.
I do want to push back
retribution and all that kind of shit, which non-religious people just don't give a shit about.
I mean, yes, we don't, but I don't think the majority of
get justice out of this. How do we atone for the crime committed? How do we get reparations for the victim? How do we get rehabilitation for the criminal? Like a fucking apology that is sincere. How about fines or whatever would help No, I don't think that imprisoning somebody to put him into a virtual slavery condition is necessarily doing justice to anybody. I mean,
Oh
it's
no,
a punishment.
the prison system as it exists now isn't justice.
Yeah, it's a punishment for people who can go 10 years in prison and come out saying that it's not that they broke a law, but it was a stupid law.
Hey, that sounds vaguely familiar. I
Doesn't it?
wonder who that could be.
Yeah. Well, it's any narcissist who's ever been arrested will say that.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I do want to push back. At least, yes, you're right about when it comes to the criminals, if they are conservative, their crimes do tend to be worse. I just don't think that's applicable to the majority of conservatives. I think more conservatives are like people that we know in our personal lives than are like the intense, like really evil people. And especially the
I didn't
average.
say anything about conservatives.
Ah,
I said the more religious a criminal is.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that is not how I heard it. So
Okay.
the clarification was very helpful. But yeah, no, I do think that most religious conservative people are closer to the people we are familiar with in our lives. And it's so frustrating to see them devote so much of their life's energy to a cause that is going to give them nothing in the end. It's just going to take everything, as we've seen recently. And like, I just don't understand it, because the conservatives in power are fundamentally different from the conservatives who are not in power. Because the conservatives who are in power, I think most of them are actually evil. Because, like, I've heard it said, I forget who said this, but power does not corrupt. It reveals what the person always wanted to do in the first place.
So my mother, one thing I can rely on her to do was always take care of animals. Well, I may have to explain things because she doesn't believe in medicine or any of that sort of thing. So there was one time when we had to have conversations about alternative medicines and veterinary science, and this is why your cat is sick. Stop. Diatomaceous earth is not a thing you should be giving your cats. I don't care what your horoscope says.
Wasn't that MLM that was literally selling fucking dirt?
If it's a multi-level marketing program, then my mom's bought into it.
Right. I have heard that Mormons do tend to go hand in hand with MLMs.
Yeah, if it's something that we can't find any evidence for at all, she's down. But if it's something we can disprove in a moment on Google, well, she didn't want to know that.
Yeah.
She's not going to believe it. She didn't want to know about it. And she actually told me those words.
Yeah.
I said, this is important. You need to know this. I'm telling her something she doesn't want to know. But I said, this is important. I can prove that this is true. You're making these allegations. We can't find any evidences for this at all. But if you get online, look, right away, every site, everything we can find from every source, they all say this opposite thing. You need to understand this. And she goes, I don't want to know. Yeah. If she's wrong, she does not want to know it. She already knows that she's wrong. She just doesn't want to have to admit it.
Yeah, don't you always tell that story about how you're the bad guy when you try to prevent her from falling for scams?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Like,
because she will only believe lies. If it's truth, keep that away.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if I would have been, well, not happier, but less stressed if I'd never deconverted from Christianity and conservatism. Because it feels like I picked a real bad time to do it. Because I grow up in this conservative bubble and I believe all the bullshit. Like, I was a creationist. My dad still is. Because a part of the frustrating conversation, he let slip that he didn't believe in evolution. And I let that one slide because there were other more important things on my mind. But like, bruh. What I should have said was that, no, you don't believe in evolution. It's a fact. You either accept it or you reject it. And if you reject it, it's either because you don't understand it or you don't want to. And that's how it is. Yeah, I wish I had said that.
When I had that conversation with my mother, for example, she actually said this sentence to me. I swear, this is what she said. I don't believe what you believe because that's not what I believe. I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe what
I've heard
believe.
that
She says,
story.
I believe what I believe because that's what I believe. And I'm not going to believe what you believe because it's not what I believe. That's the sentence she said. That to her
Yeah,
was logic.
I've never heard anything quite like that from either of my parents, but like the sentiment's there.
So she went to her church and she complained to somebody at her
Yeah,
church that I was
I've
trying
heard
to
this
force
story.
her
Yeah.
to believe in evolution. And someone at her church says, well, we're not creationists. We don't have to be creationists. It's okay to believe, it's the way they phrase it. It's okay to believe in evolution. So my mother comes back. She's gotten permission from her church. And then she says, I believe in evolution now.
What is it? Yep.
You've heard this one. I didn't know.
I have heard this one. No,
Yeah.
it's fine. My
Did
guy,
you hear what her
I was a fan before I was your friend.
did you hear what her version of it was? She wanted me to
No,
explain
actually, I
what it
don't
is,
think I
and
heard
so I
that
said,
part.
"Well, you explain to me what you think it is, and I'll jump in if I see a problem."
Okay.
And she said, "A bunch of molecules gather together become a fish, and another bunch of molecules gather together to become a man."
Damn. So it's creationism without God. I can't. That's too funny.
Yeah, there was, and all attempts to explain have utterly failed. She's watched every one of my phylogeny videos and doesn't understand any of them.
Yeah. I actually need to go through and watch all of them because I've seen the ones that you've put out since I started following you. I need to go back and watch the other one because your science content is where I think you're at your best. So
That's what I most prefer to make. But in the situation that we're in,
yeah,
I have to make other content besides
you
that.
can't exactly shut up. Yeah, and nor should you.
And it takes. There have been phylogeny videos that take up to 2 weeks to make one video, and they get roughly a third as many views as if I just turned the camera on myself somewhere and rant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
It takes that long to do all of the editing, all the special effects, find all the images, get all the video, all of the things, all the citations, all of that work, and it doesn't get anywhere near the revenue if I just turn on the camera and explode for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, people respond more to sensationalism than they do to facts because the human mind is very prone to failures in thinking.
And I'm so against
no exception.
The shock jock kind of thing, the clickbait, the sensationalism. I'm not about that.
And that's a good thing. That in the culture we're in, that unfortunately doesn't sell. And yeah, that's frustrating. That's really frustrating because then important voices get drowned out by obnoxious ones.
So, any more of this conversation with your dad?
No, that was the basics of it. I don't want to get too personal because, I don't want to slander my dad on video. I love him very much, but there are issues, and I feel better having spoken to you about it.
Okay, so you're okay with having with this being on video?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Actually, the main reason I said I was okay with it is that I have been talking to my dad a little bit about you, and he is interested in reaching out, and with your permission, I would like to give him your email. Now, I don't want to know how that conversation goes, to be honest, because I like you, I like my dad. I don't like it when people I like fight each other.
It doesn't have to be a fight.
I know, but you two are diametrically opposed on so many things, except maybe motorcycles. I think you would have that in common.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, we will let this go then. And thank you for sharing your frustration.
You are welcome. Thank you for listening and offering your sympathy. See you later, man.